Welcome to Amplified, the Chesapeake Public Schools podcast.
Chesapeake Schools is located in the Hampton Roads area of southeastern Virginia. We serve 40,000 students in 45 schools and 3 centers. This podcast is designed to tell the stories behind our story and to introduce and celebrate the people and programs that make us one of the premier school districts in Virginia.
All right, welcome back. Here we are, another new episode on Amplified, the Chesapeake Public Schools podcast. This is Matt Graham here with
Richie Babb.
And this is our January segment.
New year, new episode.
That's right. Did you have a good break?
I did. Yeah. I did. How about yourself?
I
know
great.
You were busy, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I guess everybody's busy, but
everybody is. But is that time to have new beginnings, like a nice little reset, right?
Yep.
I hear you like the cold.
No, not really. I don't need to wear that many clothes at one time.
So you're anxiously waiting for summer.
Yeah, eagerly, I would say, as opposed to anxiously. Yeah, I am.
All right. Well, one thing that we are excited to highlight during this month is there's a week set aside for our principals. January 14th through the 20th is Virginia School Principals Appreciation Week. Man, that's a mouthful.
That's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words.
It is.
But we had the opportunity to speak with 2 incredible principals that we have here. I mean, we have a ton of them. 2 stopped by and we chatted, and it was a great conversation. We heard a little bit about their backstory, things that they're excited about.
Yeah, it's great. Talk about getting to know people and getting the stories behind the story. This episode's great for that.
Right. So sit back and enjoy. With us today, we have 2 amazing principals. We have Mr. Paul Joseph from Oscar Smith High School, and we have Dr. Michelle Ferebee from Deep Creek Elementary School. One thing that we always do is we try to find out a little bit about you, or let our community know a little bit about you. Do you mind telling us about your background or even positions that you held? Mr. Joseph, let's go ahead and start with you.
Well, I came to Chesapeake in 1980. I graduated college from Virginia Wesleyan, and Sissy Chappell was a social studies supervisor, and the third day of school had come and gone, and a teacher from the alternative school had called in from Florida and said, I quit. So it was a Friday afternoon, so I went in with 9 other people to interview for the job. I had a delightful job at the time cleaning out stables, so I said, I think I'll go there. So
Delightful, I don't think is the word I'd use for that,
but I had to run home, didn't even have time to shower, so it was the old spray some cologne on, ran back up here. Came into this building actually, and did some lesson plans for it, talk with her, and next thing you know, I went to the alternative school on Monday morning.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know anything about an alternative school. I drove by it out the old Nike missile site.
Yeah.
Drove by it a few times and stopped in because it seemed like the only landmark. And they said, "No, this is the school." Like, really? So that's where it was. But I taught there for 5 years, and during the course of that time, I had the opportunity to meet Glenn Kuntz, who was an assistant principal there. I was coaching at Portsmouth Catholic High School at the time, and we scrimmaged against Glenn's team. And when he was going to get promoted from being a coach to assistant principal, he said, "Hey, would you consider going to Deep Creek to take my old job there as a coach?" So I went over there and met Mr. Hardy. He was an amazing guy.
Yeah.
So I coached there, and then I'd coached boys basketball at Catholic. When over there, they said, "Well, we don't have boys, we've got girls. Would you do that?" Like, whatever, I'll do it. So
Right.
I was there 5 years, and then I went to Indian River High, taught social studies, coached soccer, coached girls basketball there. Eventually became department chair for social studies. Wanted to move into administration, so I left. I had a good opportunity from Glenn Kuntz again, who was principal at Oscar Smith, brought me over as assistant principal in 93. And was there for 7 years, and then transferred to Western Ridge High School, was assistant principal for 3 years, and then was named principal at Crestwood Middle, was there, and then finally it was my dream to go back to Oscar Smith High as the principal. So I've been there, I think this is 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you are living the dream then.
Well, I can hold a job anyway. That's good. So I say that.
Yes.
From the stable.
I can't say it, but I can hold it. Yeah.
How about you, Michelle?
Oh, story's long. So our paths crossed at Indian River. So I was a student at Indian River High School. And I graduated from Indian River, went to TCC, then ODU, and early commitment. So who was it that got me? Hold on, Miss Luder. She came,
Yeah.
and she did the interviews at ODU. So I accepted that early commitment under Dr. Bateman. And I I actually interviewed at Crestwood Middle, Great Bridge Middle. And then by the third interview, I was like, I'm just going to be Michelle. And I went to Carver, and I had gone there as a child. And so it was Raymond Hopkins and Nancy Brown. And I just started cutting up during the interview. I was like, whatever, you know what, this got to be it. And so Nancy Brown told me that Mr. Hopkins said, are you sure about her? Because she turned into a Jamaican and started talking. So anyway, I did. I worked there for 2 years. Middle school concept came. I went to Oscar Smith Middle as a 6th grade English teacher. And then from there became a instructional specialist with Dan Mulligan. And then from there, went to Indian River Middle School as an instructional coach under Dr. Scott. And then from Indian River, Naomi took over. Naomi Dunbar, she became the principal, moved over to Indian River High School as an administrative assistant under Mr. Fry. And from Mr. Fry, I went back to Oscar Smith Middle because our program got cut. So the administrative assistants.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the funding got cut. So I went back into the classroom at Oscar Smith Middle School for a year and a half under Dr. Scott. And from there, went to Western Branch High School with Mr. Sykes and Hickory High School with Frida Turner, and stayed there for a year and ended up at G.W. Carver, South Norfolk. That's when I met up with Mr. Joseph again. And then
it was a nice reunion.
It was a nice reunion. Oh, he's such a hero of mine. And then I went to Deep Creek Elementary. That's where I am right now, proud principal of DCE.
There you go. Now, you know, it's interesting. In both of your stories, you've referenced people who were mentors and who you worked with. It's interesting that that's what would come out, because it really does make a difference. I mean, it really is important to have mentors, especially going into school administration. What made you guys choose education as a field to go into?
You want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first because you went first last time. It's going to be short. Right. So it was between acting and educating. So
you get to do both.
I do. It was the obvious choice. It was like, what better stage than a classroom where you can turn into somebody totally different, engage your kids, and have them experience some of those joys of public speaking and acting out, role playing, dramatizations, reading, writing. So all of those things, you know, they say all the world's a stage, but I think the classroom is one of the greatest stages a teacher can have. So I chose that one. Mr. Shirley, I'm sorry. I went in a different path. Linda Lawman led me this way.
How about you, Paul?
A little different path. I went to college. My mother said you can be a doctor, a lawyer, or a dentist. Those are your three choices.
Wow.
So I was pre-dental, and I was doing okay, but my chemistry professor saw that, you know, you don't really seem like you're into this. And he had a good heart, you know, he says, well, what do you really like? And I said, what I really like, I like political science and history. I was taking some of those courses. I like geography. He says, well, why don't you go into that? So I did. And I remember talking to my mother about it. And to be honest with you, she was upset with me. She said, you should be one of those things. She goes, anybody can teach her. I said, no, Mom, I want to be a really good teacher. I mean, really effective. So that was one of those things. My mom's a great support system, but she just had other dreams about what great, now she's just so proud, you know, so I've got that. Right. But, you know, you said something before about mentors. I can't tell you how many people have been great to me. I
agree.
Absolutely.
Carol Fleming took me aside one day and had observed me, and I had a less than stellar lesson, but she knew I had more in me. So she says, I'm not going to write this up. You come back Monday and do it again. And I did. And she said, don't ever go below that level again. Because I asked her, how did I do? She goes, you know how you did. That's how you should do it.
Yeah.
And so I was mad, but then I realized there was a lesson there. So it was good. And you talked about some folks, Jimmy Fry, you know, Art Brandreth, you know, Shannon Draco, Glenn Kuntz.
Yeah.
Just amazing people. And then other people like Robert Shirley. I mean, people who are just so influential.
Right. Linda Scott.
Linda Scott. Oh, gosh,
yeah.
I admired her so much. And then, like, I don't know how she does this because she was 24/7. I mean, always that way.
Yeah.
And in fact, I had to tell her one time she got sick, and like, you need to slow down a little bit, you know. But she was so dedicated.
Absolutely. She was. I mean, talk about the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, but people like her and Ed Hughes was a mentor of mine. You know, Harry Blevins.
Yeah.
And some of the mentors are ones that just came along that their coworkers. I think of like a Brian Dugan, a J.D. Degnan,
Yeah.
a Kenyatta Garrett,
Yeah.
Brenda Anderson. People like that are just. They're so inspirational, and they challenge you to think about things a little different way. So I don't want somebody to be a yes person who works with me. I want you tell me straight what you think.
Yeah.
And they do that. And they're just focused on the right thing for the school system, what's right for the kids. So I appreciate that about them.
Right.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned Carol Fleming, because that was Oscar Smith Middle School, my principal there. She's the one where she taught the Dan Mulligan and said, I got somebody for you. And so that's how I ended up out of the
She was an
classroom.
amazing
Yeah,
coach.
no doubt.
Carol Fleming was my first principal at Oscar Smith Middle. I started
Really?
mid-year.
Yeah.
And she was so influential. I was telling Richie at her retirement, or when she left Oscar Smith Middle, I dressed up as her because she was always entertaining. So I did this whole dress up thing, and we kind of did she's like, I don't want anything all sappy.
Right.
So we did a roast.
Yeah.
And we just did this whole thing. It was awesome. It was a
Well,
lot of
I
fun.
will say too, I think the role of if you have a spouse or partner, if you I've got a great wife, but she's been there by my side and she's my sounding board. And I go home because there's some difficult things you deal with every day. And sometimes you just don't know if you can work through it, things like that. But she gives me perspective. One thing she says to me, you remember a year ago what you were fretting about that day? You said it's going to be that worst day.
Yeah.
What was that? And you don't remember.
You don't remember.
Because she gives you that
right.
perspective on that. And that keeps you kind of grounded and centered.
Yeah.
Plus, she has to make sacrifices because this job takes up so much time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no doubt. What's the hardest thing about being a school principal?
Wow, you got to take this one first. I'm following your lead.
I think for me, it's just trying to take everybody's little piece and part of what they do and make it part of the whole, how it fits in, how it's a piece there. I think that's my job, is to try to translate their little sections, which are incredibly important to them, but make it a whole. And then for the kids and the parents and even the teachers, sometimes it's like, how does all these little bit parts, Algebra 1, chemistry, English 9, photography, how does that make you a whole person? And then, and then the other things we do, unofficial things, it's like filling in, talking about character and, good traits. I think that's part of what we have to do. It's hard because sometimes you can kind of get distracted from that. But if you got to always go back, what's right for the kids, I think that's what makes it better. But you can get distracted easily in this job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
I think the littles, just coming from secondary, intermediate, and now I have young scholars, pre-K, K1, 2, learning their traits and how they think and how they are transitioning into a school building, being home, some of them, with their parents, and then having to try to break apart and getting them into the building and feeling comfortable and safe from what they used to know. And then coming into an actual school building. That's been eye-opening because in most buildings, the students have already had that experience. So now ushering in kids that never been there before, it's kind of like, wow. Okay. Okay, little guy, come on.
I think Michelle and I, we've talked about this some too. Sometimes the parents didn't have a good school experience. Their school experience was rotten. And so they think their kids by default it's going to be the same thing. And it's hard to convince them, no, we're trying to do it differently now. I think we're better now than we were 10 years ago.
I think so.
We're better now than, 10 years ago, they're better than they were 10 years before because you learn, you grow.
Yeah.
And I think we get better at what we do. And I think it's hard to get them to trust that we're actually there for the betterment of their child.
Yeah.
Because they had such a bad experience.
What do you think are some of the most significant changes in education since you got in? I know it changes constantly, but what do you see as really some of the significant changes in the way we do business?
I'm thinking.
Go ahead.
I'm thinking about the pandemic because that brought on a lot of change. And we've had conversations during the pandemic and just seeing that, going so quickly from you being in school and then having to go all the way virtual, going to that one-on-one. And we still have a lot of those things that we learned from the pandemic going on now. You still have kids going into CVA and, virtual Virginia and things like that. So handling those two platforms, some of those kids still come back to us and then transitioning them back into the regular building, but we're looking at things differently. It's not always one, way to do things. Now we see there's a virtual component. We don't always have to come into a building to have a meeting now. We can have one virtually now. We don't always have to do trainings inside of a building. You can do it virtually. So I see that technology piece, that component of it being a big part of it, that's a change.
Yeah, I think we got a real forced jump start on that. I remember handing out Chromebooks, I think day before Christmas vacation out there. It was cold on the bus ramp and people were coming up because they wanted to have some sort of schooling. It was really important.
Right.
And I think now it might be, how do you manage that? How do you balance the advantages of technology with the human interaction. We had a little in-service yesterday at school on AI and its role. And I think we're going to have to learn how to balance and juggle that. That's going to be another challenge. It's not going to go away. It's just how do you use it properly and not let it overtake you.
Right.
I'm so old. I remember going from a slide rule to a calculator. And the teachers being offended, you would have a machine that would do.
Yeah.
And some were even offended. We had a slide rule. That was like, you should all do it all by hand, the calculations,
Right.
these old log books and things like that. So, there's a lot of change there.
I don't even know what a slide ruler is.
You don't?
just straight up. I don't even know.
You got to look. You did calculations on it, and it looked like kind of like 3 rulers with a little slide thing on there. You had to go slide it down here, put numbers on there, look in a book for tables, and then match it up.
Oh my gosh.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And that's how you did kind of that, like I had some of the higher level maths in high school. I wasn't really good at it, but I had higher level maths in there. You had to use those tools, and that was the tool at the time. And even then, some of the teachers thought that was cheating. I think like now, there's this AI, but I get it. You have to find balance with it. How do you make it work?
Yeah. I missed the chalkboard.
Yeah.
My handwriting wasn't great on it, but I do miss it.
Yeah. Well, I miss the smell of the Ditto machine. That fluid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you'd hand out the papers, and they were kind of slightly damp, and everybody would just smell them. I was like,
right. Yeah, that's right.
And my fingers, the skin would come off my fingers because of that liquid.
Right.
Just peel it away.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite thing about being a principal?
There's so many things. Seeing kids light up, seeing the light bulb go off. Recently, I talked about seeing one child who was having difficulties transitioning into the school building, but this year just walking in, making friends, being active, raising his hand, speaking to me now when he sees me in a hallway. So just seeing those students grow.
Yeah.
I think that personal growth is huge for me. I can think of kids right now in recent memory and even back there, they had an epiphany and decided that what we were selling was the right thing. And that when they jump on board, they jump on board with both feet.
Yeah.
And they're your biggest salesman afterwards for it. I have one that came back. He's come back a couple of times. He actually went to the middle school with me last year to tell them, hey, I had a rough start in high school, but I finally listened to what they were telling me to do. They had this program there for us. We had a merchant seaman program. He jumped into that. He is so happy right now. He says, I'm taking a trip to Japan, but he was someone who didn't have a path, didn't have a focus. And now he's got it. And now he's a total convert. In fact, he wants to tell others, hey, there's a path for you.
Yeah.
Which I love that.
Yeah. I think if anything really from the outside has visibly changed is the opportunities that students are offered now.
Right.
That program and like all the CTE programs. Right. We've recognized that not everybody has to go to college.
No.
Right.
And it's fine. I mean, when I was in school, you went to college. I mean, that was the expectation. But I've got my stepson is a welder.
Right.
And he's killing it.
Yeah.
Those opportunities.
And I know Michelle, we talked about when she was in our borough, we had our borough would talk about from kindergarten to 12th grade and beyond and where we all fit in on that whole plan. But then, like I said, I think after COVID, it kind of made me set back because I was same thing. I thought college prep, that's the answer. And then some kids will go military and some kids will go over this. Now we try to make it so you have 4 options for high school. And I want every senior, when they graduate, to have, they're either certified for a career because they go, let's say, to the tech center or get certifications so we can get there at school. They could go to the military, and the military either as a career or to get career training to move you on to another career. Be college, and college, not just for the sake of college, but college leads to careers as well.
Right.
Or the fourth is where I think we're really improving greatly is really that kind of where career companies will come in, offer our kids kind of paid internships, things like that. And then they go on and get those skills. And just the awareness for our kids, because a lot of our kids don't even understand what big companies, all the things that they have. Like, let's say we have Newport News Shipbuilding, and I don't want to build a ship, but they have a communication department, they have a payroll department, an HR department, and the kids just don't have that awareness. So we're trying to bring it to our kids. And it makes me happy when I see that. So I want every kid to walk across that stage knowing what the next day of life holds for them. So they don't say, I'm going to get a job. Jobs are dead ends. You need a career.
You need a career. Yeah. Right. Absolutely right. If you had any advice to give aspiring administrators or new administrators, what would you sit down and tell them?
Yeah. Find a good mentor. Find somebody who's going in the right direction. Talk to someone that has been in the field for a while that can give you some sound advice. Stay organized, stay on top of things, but most importantly, find a peer. Find a peer that you can talk to that understands what's going on and can guide you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think we had kind of a couple of years back, we did that training where we were in that leadership academy. Remember, it was elementary, and we were kind of paired up with elementary, middle, and high school administrators. And normally we don't really meet and sit and talk in depth, but we really did there. And I thought we learned a lot about each other and what we're going through. And I think you understand a whole lot more by that experience. I thought, we were in the same cohort and we just talked all the time, and we started talking a lot more after that because it breaks down that barrier of the separation of the different, levels of school.
Wow.
Right. Well, I guess because each level thinks they have their things they're going through, but we don't see that other side.
Right.
Fortunately, I did see secondary. I knew elementary, so I knew the differences between them. But then when things started changing and it evolves and, you lose touch a little bit, you hear the things that secondary is doing, and then you hear the things that elementary. And I think we became empathetic to each other and saying,
Very
oh,
much
wow,
so.
I didn't know y'all were going through that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
things like that.
Well, that's kind of like what you were mentioning, even as within your building principal, your role there is like getting everyone to have these little parts to make the whole. So even at the different levels with elementary, middle, and high, all those different parts of the whole. And the same thing too with our previous episode where we had the SCA people come in. One of the biggest things that they were talking about was the toughest job was to get the different perspectives and of everyone to understand maybe that common purpose.
Right.
So I think that's something that is very insightful, within here with what I'm hearing with y'all, like it's just getting everybody on kind of the same page and come together. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, social media wasn't around when I was younger. It is now. And I hate to say it's designed to feed you more of what you already think.
Right. That's
it's not-
right. It's
it
echo
doesn't-
chamber.
Yeah, exactly it. So you're hearing the same thing more and more and more. And I think in school, you get a chance maybe to just see, don't have to accept the other side, just understand there is another side and explore that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. Keeping in mind, of course, this is a family-oriented show. Do you have any inspirational or funny stories or stories that might sort of encapsulate what education
you probably
is?
have one that happens every single day.
Right.
So
That's it.
So is there anything that pops up maybe as something that you wouldn't mind sharing that, that happened?
My husband reminded me of something because I was at Oscar Smith Middle School and it was a teacher work day. So we were free of kids. And we were in the room having a meeting and they called into the room and said, Miss Ferebee, your son is on the phone. He says it's an emergency. I don't have a son. I was like, what? They said, yeah, your son is on the phone. I don't know what it is, but it sounds urgent. I think you need to take the call. So I come down and I said, hello? Hey, Miss Ferebee, what you doing? I said, who is this? It's me. I said, boy, what are you doing calling me? I just want to see how you doing. One of my students. And I said, what are you calling me? It's a teacher work day. What are you doing? Oh, no, I'm just bored. I said, listen, I'm at work. I have to work. I need to hang up the phone. Okay, you going to call me back? No. I gotta go.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So we've established relationships with students.
Yeah.
I want to hear from us every day.
Well, I've got another one, and then if you have another one, I've got one after that. So the first one, it goes way back. I was a pretty new teacher, and you'll get an idea of what year it was because we were doing current events in my class there, and I had at the alternative school I had high school social studies, so it's like a catch-all. You had everything in there.
Yeah.
So we did current events, and we were talking about the Falkland Island Wars. So I pulled out my globe, and the globe was really old. I mean, but had the globe up there. I said, "This is the United Kingdom," and I pointed to it. And I pointed to Argentina, then we pointed to the Falkland Islands, talk about what they're fighting over. So student gets the thing, he points to, he says, United Kingdom. And he shakes his head like, I understand what that is. Argentina, got it. Falkland Islands, he goes, what's this blue stuff out here? Maybe I need to go back to a little more basics here. Maybe, that would be the ocean. So talk about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, he learned something
He
that day
did,
for sure.
and so did I. That was a big point. I learned more than he did. Yeah.
A little bit of reflection there.
Let's go back and build some basics here.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. Inspirationally, at Hickory High School, I had a student who was a foster child. She came in and she gave me her background. She had a very rough start. And for some reason, she would only talk to me administratively. She would get in trouble and she said, no, I want that one. Mm-hmm. And she would come to me and she told me her backstory. Backstory was more so she wanted to go to school. She left whatever organization she was in and she enrolled herself in a high school, but announced to anybody else. She was under the radar. She was living on her own. And they found out that she had enrolled herself. She was lying on stuff, but she wanted to be in school. She knew she had to have an education. And it was found out because she got sick. So she had to go to the hospital, and they found out, she's not under anybody's care. She's doing this stuff on her own. She ended up at Hickory with a nice family, but she was having trouble adjusting. So we would talk. I would spend time with her, and it got to the point where she said, I'm sick of school. What can I do to get out? We got on a plan, and she was able to graduate through summer school. Well, Miss Turner called me one day. She was in summer school, and she said, we got to take a ride. I said, what's happening? She said, one of your young scholars, we got to take a ride. So we went over to Indian River where she was having her doing summer school, and she was asleep. So we went in and talked to the teacher, and he said, she's doing this. She just keeps sleeping every day. Yeah. So I tapped her, and she looked up, and she saw me, and she saw Miss Turner behind me, and we did like this. Talked to her in the hallway, and she said, what are y'all doing here? I said, your teacher contacted Miss Turner, and Miss Turner contacted me, and we said we would go over here to talk to our hawks to find out what's going on. Gave her the speech, and we saw her walk across that stage at the end of summer school.
That's
so
awesome.
That was, and she's in the military now. She's doing well.
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah, that's inspirational.
For sure.
Well, I think kids can keep you humble as well. So this is one I have, and it's G-rated, so it's good. I've got some others that kept me humble in other ways, which are not G-rated. But in this case, this little girl comes up to me in the cafeteria, because I sit in the cafeteria during lunchtime so the kids have access, and I can watch them, but they have access to me. She came and says, Mr. Joseph, you know what? You look like a movie star. And, in my head, I'm like, oh man, I wonder which one it could be, She goes, yeah, you look like Woody from Toy Story.
Oh man!
I was like, well, but I think Woody's probably more fluid in movement than I am, because the kids are always like, do you know you walk funny? Like, yes, I am. I am aware that I walk funny.
Well, this has been fantastic. I really could talk the rest of the day, but thank you for all the work that you do and the difference that you're making in the lives of these kids. It's really immeasurable. So I want to thank you again for coming in, Michelle Ferebee from Deep Creek Elementary, and Paul Joseph from Oscar Smith High School, and keep doing what you're doing.
All right.
Until you're tired of it.
I'm going to give a shout out to my admin team who's holding down the fort for me right now. So.
That's right.
Okay.
Mine too. Way to go. There you go.
You guys doing great.
Great job. Great job.
Sure thing. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right.
We hope you enjoyed the stories behind our story on this episode of Amplify, the Chesapeake Public Schools podcast. Feel free to visit us at cpschools.com/amplified for any questions or comments, and make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts.